From a man who had to cut off his own arm to escape certain death, to a woman who survived a plane crash by sitting on the tail of the plane. We count down 10 crazy stories of people that survived the impossible. Number 10. The 47-Day Raft Ride from Hell. Louis Zamperini had a lifelong history of turning crap into gold. When he was a juvenile criminal who constantly had to run away from things, he just honed his running ability, until he represented America in the 1936 Olympics. In 1943, World War II was raging, and Zamperini was a pilot on the Pacific Front. During a search and rescue mission, his plane crashed into a Japanese-controlled region of the ocean. A quick search of the still floating remains equipped them with 2 rafts, some paddles, a patch kit, and a little food. All this amounted to little more than a prolonged exposure death at sea. Sharks floated alongside them like dogs waiting for a treat, poking at the raft and occasionally attempting to jump in. A Japanese bomber plane attacked them 6 times, firing and even dropping a freaking depth charge at them. Number 9. Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish troublemaker. Sometimes in the olden days, nature was used to put people in a serious timeout. In 1704, Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish troublemaker, was kicked off of an expedition ship and left on an uninhabited island in the South Pacific Ocean. All he was given was a musket, gunpowder, carpenter's tools, a knife, a Bible, and some clothing. When his clothing eventually wore out, he just made some more from the skins of wild goats, which he was also hunting and eating with a knife he made out of a barrel. Selkirk was there for 4 years and 4 months in solitude. During this time, he hid from Spanish ships for fear of being captured, but discovered an English boat in 1709 and was rescued. Number 8. Man and dog survived snow-buried SUV for 3 days. Sometimes, getting trapped by nature makes a great commercial. During the 2010 winter in Colorado, a 31-year-old Indiana man named Jason Seed was trapped by deep snow in his SUV for 3 days. Jason kept hydrated with Mountain Dew, eventually switching to melted snow when he ran out of the Dew's delicious lemon limeness. He had gotten trapped after attempting to follow a shortcut that was actually not a shortcut. Eventually, he realized he needed to get help, so he walked 7 miles until he found another road, where he was then rescued. Number 7. 9 days in the Sahara Desert. Prosperi, a keen endurance runner, took part in the 1994 marathon in Morocco. Partway through the 6-day, 233-kilometer event, a sandstorm caused Prosperi to lose his way. He ended up disoriented and ran in the wrong direction, ultimately running several hundred kilometers into Algeria. After 36 hours, he ran out of food and water. He survived by drinking his own urine and eating bats living in an abandoned mosque and the occasional snake found in the desert. Not wishing to die a long, drawn-out death, Prosperi attempted to commit suicide in the mosque by slitting his wrists with a penknife he had with him. The attempt failed. Lack of water had caused his blood to thicken and clotted the wound before he died. After 9 days alone in the desert, he was found by a nomadic family and taken to an Algerian military camp, from there to a hospital. He was 186 miles off route and reportedly had lost between 30 and 40 pounds in body weight. Number 6. Amputated lower right arm to survive the mountains. In May 2003, while Aaron Ralston was on a canyoneering trip in Blue John Canyon, a boulder fell and pinned his right forearm, crushing it. After trying for 5 days to lift and break the boulder, desperation took him to great measures, like carving his name, date of birth, and date of death into the boulder, drinking his own urine because of lack of water, and videotaping his last goodbyes to his family. Finally, a dehydrated and delirious Ralston decided to bow his arm against a chalkstone and snap the radius and ulna bones. Using the dull blade on his multi-use tool, he cut the soft tissue around the break. He then used the tool's pliers to tail at the tougher tendons. After Ralston was rescued, his arm was retrieved by park authorities and removed from under the boulder. It was cremated and given to Ralston. He returned to the boulder and left the ashes there. Number 5. Struck by lightning 7 times. Roy Sullivan was a Virginia forest ranger who had an incredible attraction to lightning, or rather, lightning had an attraction to him. Over his 36-year career as a ranger, Sullivan was struck by lightning 7 times and survived each jolt, but not unscathed. His 7th strike put him in the Guinness Book of World Records. His wife was also struck once when a sudden storm welled up as she and her husband were out hanging washing. On September 28, 1983, Roy Sullivan died at age 71, reportedly of a self-inflicted gunshot wound over troubles unrelated to lightning. Number 4. Andes survivors stranded for 72 days. On Friday the 13th of October 1972, a Fairchild FH227D carrying Stella Maris College's Old Christians Rugby Union team from Montevideo, Uruguay, to play a match in Santiago, Chile. Dipping into the cloud cover while still over the mountains, the Fairchild soon crashed on an unnamed peak, which would later be called Glacier of Tears. 12 people died in the crash. Survivors not only had to withstand the hunger and the fearful mountains, but also 30-degree below zero temperatures during the night. On 22nd of December of 1972, after being isolated for 72 days, the world found out and knew there were 16 survivors that beat death in the Andes Mountains. Number 3. Frane Selak. Luck has always been on his side, or vice versa, for Croatian music teacher Frane Selak, who is well known around the world for as many fatal accidents as spectacular escapes. The first of his numerous near-death experiences began on a cold January day in 1962. When Selak was on a train to Dubrovnik, it suddenly derailed into an icy river, killing 17 passengers. He managed to escape with a broken arm and minor scratches and bruises. He was on a plane that abruptly crashed. Selak was lucky enough to land on a haystack and wake up some days later in hospital with minor injuries. He was on a bus that crashed and plunged into a river. There were 4 people dead. Astonishingly, Selak managed to escape unharmed again. His car caught fire multiple times on separate occasions, and then he was hit by a bus. In a surprising turn of events in 2003, Selak won the $1 million Croatian lottery, turning the man into either the world's unluckiest man or the world's luckiest one. Number 2. The stewardess who survived a terrorist attack. On January 26, 1972, a Yugoslav Airlines DC-9 departed from Copenhagen with 28 passengers and crew. At an altitude of 33,000 feet, a bomb in the cargo section, planted by a Croatian separatist group, exploded. The plane disintegrated and crashed on the mountains. In what must be one of the greatest survival stories of all time, stewardess Vesna Vlahovic survived the 33,000-foot descent, sitting on the tail of the plane. Number 1. The impossible real-life survivor. A family of 5 whose miraculous survival in the Boxing Day tsunami has been turned into a Hollywood film today, relived their ordeal as their story hit the big screen. Kika Alvarez, his wife Maria Ballon, and their 3 young children were swept away by a massive wall of water as they lounged around the pool at the Orchid Resort Hotel in Thailand in 2004. Mrs. Ballon recalled how she had just told off her eldest son Lucas, then 10, for drinking Coca-Cola when they heard a huge roar as the wave bulldozed its way through the complex. As she shouted at Lucas to get into the pool, Mrs. Ballon was tossed through a plate glass window and forced through the walls of the hotel.